Hi friends, welcome to the All-Canadian Reptile Girl. I'm Annaliese, probably, and today we are talking about an incredible aquatic amphibian with a super scary name that you might not have ever heard of. Let's meet the
Hellbender.
Most creatures have a scientific name. That's Cryptobranchus alleganiensis in the Hellbender's case, and a common name. It's also not really unusual for there to be another common name or two that are more regional or colorful, but the Hellbender just seems to be different with an unusually high number of alternate identities that, at least to me, are just wonderfully absurd. You'll see. Put in the comments how many different names you can count, but I promise that I am not making any of them up. Their proper common name, Hellbender, is thought to come from the animal's odd look. One theory claims the Hellbender was named by Europeans who thought it was a creature from hell where it's bent on returning. Another rendition says that the undulating skin of the Laverian water newt reminded observers of horrible tortures of the infernal regions. In reality, it's just a completely harmless aquatic salamander. One who just happens to have been recently named Pennsylvania's state amphibian. Good for them. But that's not the only thing going for mud devils. They are the largest amphibians in North America and one of the biggest amphibians on the planet. At up to 2 feet long and 2 pounds, ground puppies are the 4th biggest salamanders in the world, behind the Chinese giant salamander, South China giant salamander, and the Japanese giant salamander. I think those are all salamanders.
I think they might all be giant too.
Maybe. These guys live in rocky, cold water streams in many states in the eastern US, which is why Dozer is here with us today. Say hi, Dozer. Hi. He's from around the same area. He has nothing else to do with the video. This is an amphibian I have wanted to see up close since I first learned that they were a thing. Some of you might know that I lived in Virginia for a few years, and while where I lived in Richmond was not in the thunder lizard's range, we made quite a few fishing trips up to the mountains where they did live, and they were nowhere. They were nowhere. I never found one. Why? Well, they're not terribly common. Across their range, mudcat population is declining. The subspecies, the Ozark Hellbender, was moved to the endangered species list in 2011. They are particularly susceptible to pollution, increased water temperature, and increased sedimentation. Despite having mud in so many of their names, they actually don't live in mud and tend to avoid muddy areas with a lot of sediment. On top of their declining numbers, they also live in fast-moving, cold water, usually under big flat rocks. Not the easiest spots to get to. Even in areas that are more accessible, just flipping rocks over willy-nilly is not cool. You risk destroying their home and even potentially squishing one. Don't do that. So you just kind of have to passively observe and hope you are somehow able to just see a nocturnal, shy, perfectly camouflaged lump of river goop just out running errands. Or you could just blindly stick your soft, juicy hands into holes or under rocks. Yeah, I'm not doing that. So, despite desperately wanting to find one, it just wasn't in the cards. But that's cool. I can appreciate them remotely. It's 2022 after all. There's lots being done remotely, yeah? Just ask my dad, who hasn't left the house in 2 years. Let's take a closer look at this amazing animal that has been around for more than 150 million years. As I mentioned, they are fully aquatic salamanders, much like the adorable axolotl, which you are probably more familiar with, but they have an obvious difference in that the Hellbender lacks the conspicuous frilly external gills, at least the adults. We'll get to that in a bit. It's a whole thing. But before we get to that, how cool are these Allegheny alligators? If you think that they are as awesome as I do, could you please give that little thumbs up button a little click? Hitting that little button helps out my channel and helps this video reach a wider audience. So thank you. I also want to say a huge thanks to my patrons on Patreon. You guys are awesome and I really appreciate all the help that you provide me and my channel. Patrons get access to behind the scenes content, bloopers, updates on animals and projects I don't share on Instagram or YouTube. They just learned about an adorable new reptile I just brought into my scaly family, And I've got a huge project coming up that is going to be awesome, and my patrons will be with me every step of the way. If you want to see all that too, head on over to patreon.com/allcanadianreptilegirl to check out the different ways that you can lend your support. Thanks! Devil dogs have a low, flat body. They range in color from yellowish to red to black with just about every shade in between. They secrete a very slippery, slimy mucus from their loose, wrinkly skin, hence one of my favorite names for them, which is Snot Otter. What's that? Oh, it's just a snot otter. Old-timey tales say that the mucus they produce is highly poisonous. It's not, it's just really, really slippery. They have strong legs with grippy toe pads that allow them to maneuver their way upstream against a strong current. Mud dogs can swim, but they do prefer to stick to army crawling along rocky riverbeds at night, hunting for crayfish, frogs, aquatic bugs, worms, fish, and sometimes even other hellbenders. While they do have a lot of very tiny, sharp teeth, their preferred method of eating their prey is to just open wide and swallow it whole. The sudden opening of their mouth underwater creates a low pressure area that hoovers in a bunch of water, and whatever critter happens to be occupying said water at the time. And just like with their definitely not poisonous slime, there are old wives' tales suggesting that they are venomous too. They're not. A gulp is enough to do the job for them. These slippery salamanders have a lifespan of up to 30 years. They reach sexual maturity between 5 to 8 years old. Male hellcats will find a suitable nest rock and will clean and prepare it for the imminent arrival of a lady friend. If and when a lady finds a suitable male with a nest, she will lay her eggs and then she will, well, leave. If she doesn't, the male will actually chase her off, or if she's small enough, eat her. The male will then fertilize the eggs and will maintain and guard the nest for the 2 months it takes for the babies to hatch. The male will even continue to guard the babies after they hatch for a little while. As a baby water dog, you know it's time to leave the nest when dad starts snacking on your brothers and sisters. Babies will sport the frilled gills just like an axolotl for about a year, at which point they absorb the gills back into their body and morph into adults. Unlike most salamanders that move to more terrestrial existence after maturing and losing their gills, the Granpu remains aquatic. How do they manage without gills though? Do they need to surface to breathe? Hidden scuba equipment? What's the deal? Well, they do have lungs, like us, but they don't really use them for breathing much. Mud puppies, which, by the way, is not a cool name. There's already another aquatic salamander that has claimed that as their official name. Come on, guys. Anyway, they use their lungs as a more of a swim bladder to control buoyancy, which is kind of funny because fish that have evolved the ability to breathe air often use their swim bladder as a rudimentary lung instead of for buoyancy. Kind of weird crisscrossy evolution thing going on there. Anyway, they do retain a gill slit. Their scientific name, Cryptobranchus, means hidden gill after all, but they don't use them much to breathe either. No. The vast majority of their breathing is done by absorbing dissolved oxygen into their bloodstream through their permeable skin, which is why they require that fast-moving, cold, highly oxygenated water to survive. To ensure that they are able to process sufficient oxygen, they have a lot more skin than they need to just cover up. Extra wrinkles and skin flaps provide greater surface area to process oxygen. You can see this clearly with the very prominent ripples along their sides, which is where they get two of my other favorite names for them, which are lasagna lizard and old lasagna sides. Again, I promise I'm not making any of these names up. Now that you've seen this adorable little slime lump and learned all sorts of cool things about it, I bet I know what you're thinking. No, nope, just no. Unless you can actually replicate an actual stream in your actual house, the snot otter is not an animal that will do well in captivity. But if you happen to cross a cold mountain stream in the eastern US, you can gaze out and know that somewhere in that turbulent water, hiding under their favorite rock — they do have favorite rocks, by the way, which is maybe my favorite thing about them — might just be a lasagna lizard invisibly doing their thing. And I think that's pretty cool. Well, that's it for today. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about the Hellbender. How many different names did you pick up? If you know of any I didn't use, let me know in the comments below. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, remember to nurture all nature. Bye! Who? All lasagna size is like when your friend does something that's so typically them and they go like, oh, it's good old lasagna sides again. Oh, something cracked. Nocturnal, shy, perfectly camouflaged lunch of river goop. My favorite meal. Okay.